Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the June 24th meeting of the Wilmington Board of Selectmen. All members are present, and we just concluded an executive session for the purpose of discussing strategies with respect of collective bargaining with New England Police Benevolent Association of Local 13, and also to approve executive session minutes from May 28th, June 5th, and June 12th. Would you please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, thank you. We have Treasury warrants to approve, numbers 50, 50A, 51, and 51A. Are there any motions?
So moved. Second.
Motion's made and second. Any discussion? All in favor? It's unanimous to approve 50, 50A, 51, and 51A. Thank you. And we have one set of minutes from June 10th of 2019 to approve. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Thank you, Mrs. O'Mahony. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Mr. McCoy. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? It's unanimous also. Okay, so we'll move right into our 7 o'clock appointment, which is a public hearing for a right-of-way public request from Verizon New England Incorporation and Reading Municipal Light Department to place one pole on Ballardvale Street. And we were expecting Karen Levesque, but I think in her place we have Steve. Welcome. Come on up to the desk.
Steve, your last name again?
B-I-G-L-E-Y.
Thank you.
Thank you. And Steve, if you don't mind, for the audience at home and for my colleagues, just letting us know your position.
My name is Steve Bigley. I work for Utility Consultants Synergetics, and I'm here to represent the interest of Verizon New England for the petition to place one pole on Ballardvale Street.
Steve, thank you for being here. So Jeff, do you want to give us a little insight to why we're having this hearing?
This is at the request of Verizon on behalf of themselves as well as Reading Municipal Light. The petition was submitted back on May 23rd. We received it on May 28th. And based upon a review, it was provided to the town engineer, Paul Looney, who notes the Department of Public Works has reviewed the petition for Verizon Reading Municipal Light Department to install a new utility pole on Ballardvale Street in the vicinity of Route 125 intersection. The DPW has no comment or concerns on this matter and recommends approval of the petition to place one utility pole on Ballardvale Street at the location described in the petition. And then there's also correspondence or an email from Valerie Gingrich, Director of Planning and Conservation. The proposed pole location on Ballardvale appears to meet the requirements to be exempt from the conservation permitting. Otherwise, there's no comments or concerns. So since this is a public hearing, anybody in the audience would have an opportunity to comment.
Sure. Before we go to the audience, Steve, is there anything you would like to add?
No, I'm sufficient, thank you.
Okay. And then, as the manager mentioned, this is a public hearing. Is there anyone who would like to be heard on this matter? Okay, seeing none, turn it over to my colleagues. Do my colleagues have anything they want to add before we conclude the public hearing?
Yeah, Mr. President, just to ask, this is a telephone pole on the opposite side of the street where the other telephone poles are?
Yes.
Any particular reason it's...
There's new construction. It was requested by Jeff Smith from State Electric Corporation. They're building a new a strip mall. I thought that's what he told me. I was out there. I'm the one who staked the pole location. But there's new construction going in down there along the edge of 200 Ballardvale Road. And this pole will get the utilities from one side of the street across to the other.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Mr. Kyra, is there any other comments or questions? Okay. Seeing none, is there a vote to close the public hearing?
Could I just note, I just want to make sure it's noted that the abutters were notified by the town on June 4th, it looks like. Mr. Hull, is that
Yes.
correct? Okay.
Yes.
And did we hear any responses from any of the abutters? I mean, no one's here tonight, but did
No.
anyone communicate to you?
No, I've not received any responses, any comments from anyone.
Thank you. I have nothing.
Thank you. Is there a motion to close the public hearing?
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Kyra.
I'll second.
Seconded by Mrs. O'Mahony. Any discussion? Seeing none. All in favor of closing the public hearing? That's unanimous. Thank you. And now, Jeff, you need a vote from us here tonight. Is that correct?
Yes, a vote to authorize this pole relocation.
Okay. Would anybody like to offer a motion to approve the change of the pole location?
I'll make that motion.
Thank you, Mr. Reed. Motion's made. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Mr. McCoy. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? It's unanimous. Steve, thank you for being with us.
Thank you for your consideration.
Okay, have a good night. Thank you. Got some documents we're going to sign. We're just a few minutes ahead, but I do see our next appointment is with Mr. Hooper. He's in the audience. We'll give him a chance to come forward and get settled as we sign off on these. Well, so those documents are coming around, and as they are, I'll introduce our next 7:10 appointment, just a few minutes ahead of schedule here. It's with our Public Building Superintendent, the one and only George Hooper is with us. Good evening, George.
Thank you, good evening. Thanks for having me tonight.
Thank you for being here.
The town manager asked me to come tonight so I could give you guys an overview on what my department does over the summer. When the schools close, we don't go on vacation. That's what we do, and some of the projects that we have that are coming up. As I was stating, as the school comes to a close for the summer, that's when we really ramp up and a lot of our things get going. Just before school closes, you know, there's a lot of activities, the school band concerts and graduation. That's everything that we set up for. In each school, my team goes through, and Jeff, did you want to ask me something?
Nope.
In each school, my team starts at the top and we work our way down. They literally take every piece of furniture out of a classroom, wash it down, wash the walls, strip the floors, and put new coats of wax on them. Get them ready, put the furniture back in, get it all set back up, do the hallways, and move down to the next floors. Meanwhile, they're in there also cleaning univentilators, air systems, looking for any issues that might be there, put in work orders to have them repaired, and they move on. Each one of the classrooms, as we go through, we make sure all lighting fixtures, exit signs, everything that needs to be in place is there and existing. Classroom walls, like I said, are completely wiped down for the start of the new year. We refinish all the gym floors. Everything gets stripped down and a new coat of finish gets on. We're doing this over at the Woburn Street School. We're adding new pickleball lines to the court over there to get them all set. We test and inspect all our life safety systems, which include everything from smoke, pull stations, horn strobes, also our fire extinguishers, and our intrusion alarms for our buildings. At this time, when our heating systems are no longer used, this is the time that we service them. We go through the heating systems to make sure they will be ready for the next heating season that comes up. It's kind of contrary to when we're in our heating season, that's when we do all our air conditioning. So everything is all done at that time. We go through the kitchens, we make sure the exhaust fans, grease traps, everything's ready to go. Change filters and belts on our air handlers, our rooftop units, our RTUs that we go through. We're installing a couple of new air conditioning systems over at the Butwell School. These are typical to what we hear at the town hall. Per classroom, they're a through-the-wall system. We're starting the first phase of our lighting retrofit over at the West Intermediate. This is typical to what we just completed at the Woburn Street and the Shawsheen. I don't know if you've had the chance to get into any of the schools and see the new LED light fixtures that we're putting in place. And we work with the RMLD as far as obtaining any rebates, the maximum rebate we're allowed. We're going to be painting the food pantry, which actually started today. We use the inmates. They're over there. We scrape and paint a few of our town buildings. My assistant, Brian Scouten, works with the Sheriff's Department, and we plan on painting the exterior of the food pantry, the Little West Schoolhouse, also known as Veteran Services, and the Carriage House over at the Hartnett Tavern. Any questions so far? Okay. We assist the school department and the recreation department to make ready for their summer programs. The schools are very busy during the summertime. Not only is there summer school programs, we have our CARES program, our Tiny Tot program, the recreation programs that are going on in individual schools. We will move all the equipment that is necessary for them to get their programs started. During the summer months, they'll be in there most of the time on the first floor of the buildings, utilizing the gyms and the CAFs. When it comes to completion, we move everything back. We take everything out and we clean those areas to make sure that they're ready for the school year. We ready the bathhouse at Silver Lake to make sure that it's all set for the opening of the lake. We do the beach day over there. We help set up on that, as well as the 4th of July festivities. We have them set up on the common. We provide power, we move equipment around, and we assist the 4th of July committee on putting everything together. We also maintain Yentile Park, which gets very busy this time of year, trying to keep these concession stands clean and full of supplies. We're installing a new AC unit over at Dispatch at the Public Safety Building. The original one that's in there is coming up on age, so it's time for a replacement. And as you know, in our town meeting, we were approved to do a boiler replacement over at the town library. We'll be going out to bid shortly. We're just waiting for completion of design. Once that's done, we'll go out to bid, and our hope is to have this everything completed before the heating season. This will be the dual fuel system that we talked about, which will have the number 2 heating oil right now, and as soon as National Grid can work with us and get our gas feed to the building, we will convert that building to natural gas also. Out here at the town park, I don't know if you've noticed, we have a lift out back. We're also retrofitting and changing those light fixtures that are the old 1500 watt mercury vapors to the new LED high efficiency fixtures. These are the ones that are out back for the football field that's out there that when Pop Warner practices out there in the fall. This is just some of the projects that we have going over the summer. Meanwhile, we also do our regular maintenance. We maintain the library and the public safety building, the town hall. So we do this, and we have a 10-week window to get all these projects done. So it keeps us relatively busy. Questions?
Any questions?
I know that was a lot. I kind of threw at you. There was quite a few in there, but that's what we're doing this year. When with the heat of the season, like I said, my guys are on the 3rd floor of the building, and there's not a lot for air conditioning in the older schools, top of the Shawsheen, so they try to get off those floors as quick as they can. The weather's been working with us right now. It hasn't been too humid, hasn't been too bad, so they're moving right along, trying to get off those top floors. Like I said, I'd also like to extend my appreciation to the school department and the other town departments that help work with us and to get this work together in cooperation. So.
Great. Thank you for the update. Does anybody have any comments or questions for Mr. Hooper?
Yeah, just a quick comment, Judge. It's an unbelievable amount of work that you guys do within a 10 or 12-week period. You said 10-week period.
Correct.
Yeoman's work for what you do on behalf of the town and keeping everything operating and looking good, as you always do. Just a question I didn't hear. Is anything happening at the senior center? I know your group is always in every building doing maintenance all the time.
I've been working with Terry Marciello over there. We've just completed all new lighting fixtures throughout I don't know if you've seen it in there. They got a new refrigerator freezer, and I'm working with Terry to upgrade the kitchen and the equipment that's over there also.
That's great.
Yeah.
Thanks. Thank you.
Mr. McCoy.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just to echo Mr. Carr, what he said, yeah, you guys and gals, there's a few girls that are, women, excuse me, that work for the school, the town, that keep the place clean. They do a great job, and there's no question, I don't hear anything negative, so obviously you guys must be doing a great job, and gals. So, just wanted to mention that to you folks. And when you said that you redo the gymnasium floors, you sub that out, I would assume?
When we do a complete strip, like we're
yeah.
doing at the Woburn Street, when we take it down to the bare wood,
Right.
yes, we sub that out. But all the other ones, we do in-house.
Really?
We screen them and do them in-house.
All right, no, 'cause I
So
know
when you
there's-
see them, when you go in there in the beginning of the school year, if you're in any of the basketball leagues and you see what's happening, you can really get to appreciate what these guys do, so.
Once again, you
Gals.
folks do a great job, okay? Yeah, and the gals, don't forget. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Anybody else? Mr. Reed?
Just extend my appreciation, Mr. Hooper. You guys do a great job. So no off seasons, surely. So well done.
Thank you. Well, this would be a shout out to my staff. They do all the hard work. So when the heat is on, literally, they're really going at it. If you want to appreciate it someday, come into one of the schools, and when you see these people, really, I've taken Jeff so he can see what it's like on those real humid days when you have stripper down on the floor and they are scrubbing away. And they have some of these tools like a doodle bug, which I'm sure you don't know what it is, but there's some elbow grease being put into there, and they are really, that's all them. They do the work.
Just want to take a second to echo what my colleagues up here are saying. I know you're working with resources of varying age, so I appreciate the attention to detail that you're giving and kind of keeping our older assets running and functioning for the community. So we really appreciate the time that you spend, especially on kind of these older buildings that you're keeping going for us for now. We really appreciate that.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, if I could just
Sure.
offer a couple of comments. One is, I think it's hard to fully appreciate what goes on until you've been in a building and you see literally all the desks and tables and bookcases and everything else that's pulled out and pulled over to a certain area, and they literally go through, as George described, and strip and reapply the floor finishes and so on. Then when that dries, and sometimes it takes a while, they'll have fans running and everything else, and they move everything back and start on the other side. It's quite an operation. And I really give George and his staff a lot of credit. Certainly George is the one that kind of maps this out every year and working in conjunction with the school department. So kudos to George. The other thing I would just mention is an issue that we need to be looking at going forward is revisiting the facilities plan. George was the chair of that committee, and I think, as I've suggested to the chair, should plan to have a discussion about that and what next steps should be, perhaps in the fall when the school committee, with the school committee and the finance committee as well.
Absolutely. And just lastly, George, I also want to thank you and your staff for the wonderful work that you're doing this summer. A lot to be done in just 10 weeks. If you need more time, I'm sure the children of our community would like to offer you some more time, but I don't know if that's possible. And lastly, I want to thank you. Recently had the opportunity, you took the time to tour me through the Wildwood School, and I got to see firsthand the work that you guys are doing, so I appreciate you giving me that opportunity. I know it's been a real topic of discussion, the Wildwood, so it was very thorough and very informative tour that you took me through. So I would encourage others, just as Jeff mentioned, if you want to see it in action, stop by and
Anytime.
see the men and women of your department
My pleasure to take you through.
firsthand. So thank you for that in advance, and hopefully it's a very successful and productive summer for you folks.
Okay, look forward to it.
All right.
Thank
Thanks
you.
for being here,
Thank you
George.
very much.
Have a great summer. Thank you. Okay. Moving right along. We're a little ahead of schedule, but if there's no objections, we'll move right into our 7:30 appointment. It's with Mr. Mike Woods, our DPW Director, who is going to talk to us about some changes in trash and recycling, the contract we currently have with Russell Disposal. Mike, good evening.
Good evening.
Thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me. I wish I could come in and give you good news like George was able to do, but I'm here tonight. I think this is the third time now on this trash contract that we have. It's a 10-year contract. We are entering our 4th year on it. The world of solid waste is a very difficult one at this time for the entire world, the United States specifically, and what concerns us is Massachusetts and specifically Wilmington. The costs for recycling are just escalating beyond most people's imagination. When we started this contract 4 years ago, we were actually getting 5 cents a ton for recycled goods for the commodity. Currently, the bill that we just received a couple weeks ago was at $94.50 per ton to get rid of it. And we see that that's really going to be the new norm, I'm afraid. We all had high hopes last year when I was in here talking to you about a new amendment to the contract to keep the contractor afloat, and hoping that, I think we all hope that things will at least level off at that point or get better was the real hope. And things have gotten worse, and I don't see any silver lining in sight. I've talked with my counterparts in various communities around the area, and everybody that has gone out to bid in the last 2 to 3 years for contracts for solid waste have seen huge increases, somewhere in 30-35% increase in 1 year, jump to jump. I just read today about Boston finalizing their contract, and I believe they went from, I believe it was $75 a ton to $125 a ton, with a cap on it at $160 a ton, so there's an escalator every time it goes up. It keeps going up. We have no such costs or any, we do now because of the amendment where we're paying up to half, up to $50, but we're not paying at this point anyway, any amount of money that's near that. Unfortunately, the contractor has come back to us telling us, about his losses and looking at severing our contract, and also with a couple of the other towns he has in Wilmington, in Massachusetts. We talked about ways we could do this in an orderly manner, and I believe the manager and I have come up with an agreement, a tentative agreement with the contractor to pay the current rate of up to $50 on the recycled goods going to the MRFs, and starting on October 1st, we would then pay the full freight. There's some discussions on, whether we'll have a cap on that or not, but with that contract, we will, with that amendment to the contract, that would take us 9 more months out. In the meantime, the town will go out to bid and get a new contractor, and we'll probably see even higher costs, unfortunately, based on the bids that we see coming in. But that's just the way things have gone in solid waste. It's now more expensive to get rid of recycling than it is to get rid of trash. But the Commonwealth recycling is mandatory. It's legislated that we do it. I personally think it's the right thing to do, but it's now the very expensive thing to do.
Thank you, Mike, for that update. Unfortunately, again, like you mentioned, you're here under these circumstances. Jeff, do you have something you want to add to this before we move into a discussion?
Yeah, so the concerns that I have, we were literally between a rock and a hard place, so to speak. When you look at the alternatives, Russell has, as the director noted, advised us that they're concerned about their ability to sustain their operation unless Wilmington and the other communities that they're currently doing business with are going to assume the full freight on the disposal cost for recyclables. So rather than a maximum of $50, potentially at this point up to $94. It's, you know, I don't know how much higher it will go. It's hard to say. But so option A, which is the one that I'm recommending, is that we make an amendment to this contract as Mike described, where we would pay the full freight, remain with Russell through June 30th of 2020, and then in the meantime have go through a bid process and be able to obtain another contract. What that will do for us is a couple of things. First of all, anticipating that a new contract is going to be significantly more, and I think Mike had referenced in some of the other communities an increase of 35%. In the fiscal 2021 budget, we would be able to account for that and have to make a serious adjustment in terms of the operating budget. The other piece of this is the last time we went out for a contract based upon the advice of council at the time, I believe in part because trash and recycling collection is not subject to the public procurement law. There's no requirement, you know, technically to go out for bids. I believe council at the time concluded that there was no limit on the number of years that a community could contract for those services. So you'll recall we entered a 10-year contract with Russell. I've had discussions with our current council and been advised that in his opinion we are obligated to maintain a 3-year contract. That's the maximum we can have unless we go to town meeting and get approval to go to a 5-year contract. I note in the, there's an article that I think Mike was referring to earlier when he was talking about the city of Boston. They just went through a process where they obtained a 5-year contract with, I believe, 3 1-year extensions. But of course, the challenge of making a change now, if we were to say, you know, this is it, you know, we need to part company, we've got a twofold challenge. One is where, you know, the cost at least is driven in part by the company amortizing their vehicles and equipment over the term of that agreement. Clearly, a 10-year situation is much different than a 3-year. So if we were to enter an agreement now with a new contractor, not only are we going to see the full cost of the recycling. At this point, there's no way we're going to get around paying that full freight, but they're going to amortize their cost to supply us with their vehicles over a 3-year period, because according to council, unless we go to a special town meeting, I suppose, we're bound to a 3-year contract. So in my estimation, by making this adjustment that's being recommended, getting us through fiscal 2020, we can account for the new number in the budget, and then I would propose an article at town meeting that would seek to authorization to extend the contract from a 3-year contract to at least a 5-year contract, with the possibility that, depending upon how the services run, we could extend the contract perhaps for a 6th year or maybe a 7th year. And again, the longer the contract, it's going to have some cushioning effect, if you will, on our cost, because the company knows they've got us for a longer period of time. So, you know, again, it's not a good situation, but we're trying to, you know, make the best of a difficult situation.
Thank you. Mike, do you have something you want to add?
One other bonus to this agreement that was tentatively reached is if we agree to all these various terms we've just discussed, we also owe a little over $525,000 on the current barrels that you see in the street. That was amortized over 10 years, so if we were to terminate the contract with Russell, we would have to pay them off immediately, and even if they filed bankruptcy, we're being told by council we would need to pay that $525,000. they have agreed to, once we separate from them and go with whoever the new contractor may be, we will just continue to pay the amortization schedule, and that those barrels will be paid out over to the end of that contract, which would be another 6 years out.
Can you say that one more, that last part? I couldn't hear you there.
Yeah, the barrels, the $525,000, will be able to continue to pay Russell for the amortization of those barrels for the full 10-year contract. So we amortize those over 10 years and not have to come up with that $525,000 with the end of the contract.
So it basically, as I recall, and you can correct me, Mike, if I'm, but we're paying somewhere in the neighborhood of $95,000 a year to pay down that, the debt, if you will, for the barrels that people use. So the plan would be, even when we sever the relationship as of June 30, 2020, we would, for the remaining, I guess, 5 years at that point, pay the $95,000 or $96,000 a year to pay off the barrels, so we're not having to come up with $525,000 all at one time.
Mike, in your estimation, if we were to take this recommendation and come 2020, we go our separate ways with Russell, what's the likelihood that a new company would require our residents to get a new type of barrel? And that we would...
Zero. The barrels are something that's purchased by the town. The town actually owns those barrels.
So the machinery that they would use would be equipped to handle the barrels we
Right.
currently have. We wouldn't have to get new
Pretty
barrels.
much two companies, and they're not even in the United States. We buy from the one in Canada. They make the same barrels for all throughout the United States.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other comments or questions for Mr. Woods?
I don't know if this is a question for Mr. Woods or if this is a question for Mr. Hull, but obviously we had a contract that went to 2025, and Russell's now saying they can't honor it till 2025 because of an increase in their expenses. In the contract, was there any type of early termination clause that allowed them to do this without any repercussions? I mean, I understand that they're saying basically they're saying they're on the verge of bankruptcy, and I would hate to, bankrupt a company, but my concern is we entered into a 10-year contract with a company. Everyone, I'm assuming, was voluntarily and willingly doing so, knowing that there are variables in costs, and we're now saying that we're going to let them out of it in 5 years, and they're giving us the courtesy of letting us pay the barrels off over the 5 years we should have had in the contract anyway. I'm just kind of curious if there are any other contractual clauses about early termination that we should be aware of, either on behalf of Russell's side of it or for the town to be aware of. Because I'd hate to see us get into a contract with another company and then a year from now they're telling us prices have gone up even more, and even though we have a 3-year contract, they want to get out of it.
I think I can speak to that. There's 2 provisions where council feels that we're in jeopardy with the contract if we would try to force them to honor it. One is something called force majeure, where it's a condition that's out of their control, trying to cut off all recycled goods going to that country, which about 70% of the recycling goods from the United States went there. So this was something that's out of their control. So that's the first avenue they would take. At that point, I'm not sure how our service would go, because now we'll be in a confrontational situation with them. The second one is to just file bankruptcy, then the contract ceases anyway due to bankruptcy court. And my biggest concern is, besides water and sewer, the biggest thing that we need to do, because it hurts everybody in the town if it goes bad, it's trash and recycling to some degree, but trash, certainly don't want that piling up in the streets. And I'm trying to get somebody in here, and it would take a good 4 or 5 weeks to get somebody in here under an emergency type of scenario, like Waste Management come in. They would want an immediate 3-year contract, no bid, and it would be expensive.
Is Russell planning on bidding for a new contract with us, or are they completely out as of 2020?
The Russell that we have, there's various divisions of Russell. Division that we currently have would not be bidding. I think they're going to dissolve. But Russell Disposal itself, the parent company, they may bid.
Okay, thanks.
Street?
Just briefly, Mr. Woods, thank you for coming in and explaining some of this to us. I think we all remember what the May and June of 2015 was like when the previous company was kind of winding out their last few weeks, and the pickup issues. I certainly want to try and avoid that in the future. I did look into a bit of the surrounding towns. I know Andover just recently informed their residents that they're reducing the types of recyclables that they're taking. I know Billerica, part of their contract is a threshold of contaminated recycling, and last Monday they started curbside checking of their recycling, which is...
That's what the state is recommending to go deeper into this problem. Is China's found that their recycled goods that they were receiving were about 25% contaminated.
Yeah.
So they came up with this national sword policy. Now it has to be less than 0.5% contaminated. We do pretty good. We're about 16% contamination, and that's considered very good actually for the United States in general. So until we get down below this 0.5%, China's not taking anything.
Yeah.
So the campaign is to try to get people to start cleaning up until it'll take about 3-4 years for the new MRFs to come on. That will actually clean whatever the people don't clean, and fully clean it up to the point where it'll be a valuable commodity again. So what we do is we have a lot of things on our webpage. We send out brochures like quarterly or semi-annually. We're always putting out public service messages. The manager, I think every quarter for the past 3 quarters, has put out something on recycling, and what's the right things to recycle. And honestly, it is confusing for folks, because there's a lot of things that you would think are recyclables that are not. All these plastic containers that your strawberries and things come in, those are not recyclable. Most people don't know that. And
Yeah, I mentioned it not just to, I guess, flush out the point that we're not really alone in going through this. I know that when we met back last August, the town manager brought to our attention that there was an issue with the performance bond for Russell, and I know that he's stayed up on that point as well. But we're certainly there are forces larger than us at play that have kind of dictated that really us and all the other communities that are in the country are really kind of scrambling to figure out a solution to this. So, wish I could see you in better circumstances, Mr. Woods, but thank you for the update.
I would just, I guess, comment that, one of the things that I want to pursue further is a conversation with the folks at DEP to find out what their longer-term strategy is. It's as Mike has indicated, it's the right thing to do to recycle, and that's admirable, but you can't just say recycle when communities are in the predicament that we're in. There's got to be some type of assistance and help from the state, and DEP in particular, as to what is their longer-term game plan. To some measure, when we've had, and I have not had any conversations more recently with DEP, but the early on response was, well, this is a temporary blip, we just have to play through. But I don't really see it as a temporary circumstance.
It's certainly not temporary, and their goal now is they've gotten people used to recycling. The idea, they're not going to stop that. Communities in other states have stopped recycling, or the recycling is just going to landfill anyway. But Massachusetts wants to just clean up the waste stream, get it to the point that may take 5 years, may take 10 years, and then hopefully things will go back to being less expensive. I doubt we'll ever see commodities back to where it was free for towns to have it collected. So.
Mr. McCoy?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is almost like deja vu all over again. About a year ago, I know you had to come before the board, and I did support the town to subsidize the cost because I didn't want to see it being stopped at that time. But here we are again. And I'm from the old school when a contract is a contract is a contract. But I understood that last time. But I have serious reservations now relative to that. It's amazing that it costs more money to recycle than it is for trash. We're almost better off just trashing everything, to tell you the truth, if that's what it
And I
really
may be
comes down
recommending
to.
that if it wasn't
You know,
illegal.
hey, there's a couple ways to skin a cat, but anyway, but it's kind of sad that the state puts this mandate on us, and I get it, but with the state, it's easier to put that mandate, but we're the ones who are supposed to pay for all this. So if they're subsidizing any, I don't believe they're subsidizing any of this cost, are they? They're not. So it's a lot easier to put mandates on the town. I have some serious reservations this time around supporting this. I was really hoping by making that vote to help Russell, that the management, not the town manager or the town, their management, would get the act together. And obviously they haven't. And I've got serious reservations in going forward with that. And, so that's where I'm coming from. And unfortunately, I have to state that, but yeah.
And I know your feelings, and I think we probably all have that in some way, but the reality of it is that it really has nothing to do with the contractor. They've been very good.
Yeah.
It's not them, they load up the truck, they take it to the MRF, and where they used to say, okay, you got 15 ton on there, we'll give you a nickel for each ton. Now they say, well, it'll be $94.50 for each ton. So that's going to change the profit dynamics of the company severely, and that's what's taking place. It isn't anything that Russell's doing wrong. It's just, I guess, the nature of the beast, and it's costing them, it's costing us.
I apologize. I'm sorry, Michael, go ahead, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
I think, through you, Mr. Chairman, just a quick question. Just to talk about that for a moment. I know it may say here, what do we pay per ton on trash, and what do we pay per ton on recyclables?
Well, recyclables, like I say, has been bouncing around right now. This month was $94.50 per ton.
All right.
Okay, now, this is just to get rid of it once it's gotten to the truck. And then on trash, was somewhere around, somewhere near $80.
$80.
And that contract is up a year from June 30th with Wheelabrator, and they're talking about a 10% increase on their contract. So we'll be looking at a significant increase in trash disposal also next year.
All right, and once again, we're mandated by the state relative to the recyclables, correct? All right, we could flip that around, solve our problem, but that's not gonna happen.
Right.
It's
We
just
do
sad.
about 7,500 tons in trash, about 2,500 tons in recycles.
Yeah.
The next difference, that's what we're paying extra.
Mr. Kyra?
Mr. Chairman, so I guess the million-dollar question, Mike, or the $93,600 question a month is, what happens if the board doesn't support this?
If the contract doesn't get signed, then they're going to stop picking up.
Stop
Trash.
picking up trash and recyclables, or
Correct.
just recyclables?
Both.
Both,
Yeah.
okay.
They're going to file bankruptcy. So, and even if you agree and their other big customer, Walpole, disagrees, I'm not sure that we're going to be in good shape. So they're meeting tomorrow night, I believe, and we need both towns need to sign up for this deal for them to stay solvent and for us not to be scrambling to try to get a company in here to pick up the trash off the streets in July. July 4th happens to be the busiest week for trash, so it's a very inopportune time to be scrambling.
So it hinges on both communities agreeing to it.
That was my understanding.
Yes. Yeah, and
Yeah.
I've had conversations with the town manager in Walpole. He's also informed his board, and as Mike indicated, I guess they're meeting tomorrow. It sounds like to have a similar discussion to the one we're having tonight. But it's my understanding as well that in order for this to be viable, both communities need to sign on. And I think the Jim Johnson, who's the town manager in Walpole is kind of taking a similar tack to try to get them through this coming year, and then to go through a bid process and part company after that.
So I guess the short, cute answer for that 93,500 is, if we don't agree to it, that number's gonna be more, $250,000 plus.
Yeah, and just a couple follow-ups. So agreeing to this is still cheaper,
Yes.
inexpensive than going off in another
Yes.
direction. Is that correct?
Yes, as you will see when we bid it, I plan to go out to bid in November, so I'll have a number for our budget season, and so I'll know exactly what it's gonna cost us sometime in December.
I think to build off Mr. Carr's point, it also reduces the chances that people's trash are just piling up if they just decide one week that they're done. And it doesn't eliminate it, certainly, but we're back in that unfortunately familiar place of between a rock and a hard place on this issue.
I'm just concerned with waiting until November. I understand that we're trying to be accommodating to them in the hopes that they will continue giving us the same level of service for an extension, but my concern is, what if Walpole agrees, Wilmington agrees, in 3 months from now they realize they still can't sustain this until June of 2020? We're scrambling then.
Worst case scenario.
Right.
Then I'm back here again, I'm telling you that, we're in trouble. They do tell us that they wouldn't walk off, they'd give us time to get somebody to come in, even if they file bankruptcy now. We don't agree to this. They have agreed to keep the current amendment in place till October 1st. So I would think if they were coming with hat in hand and they were gonna fold, that they would say they need that money now, not October 30th. So
Okay.
you never know in the business world what's gonna take place. Nobody's in the business to lose money. It's a lot of hard work, a lot of anguish and what have you, and I think they wanna at least be breaking even, but they claim that they lost $500,000 last year, so they're trying to recoup that and close out contracts and stop the bleeding.
Through the chair, just another question. Mike, last time when we were here and we had to revise the contract, I thought there were other communities too,
Yes.
4 or 5 other communities that had Russell in addition to us, Walpole. Did those other communities drop out or go?
Their contracts came due and they didn't re-up them.
Okay.
Walpole's their only other big community. They have Chelsea, but there's very little recycling that goes on there. I understand that runs about $50,000 a year. So it's not for them. And then the other big town they had, I believe, was Drake.
Yes.
And that contract expired, or I believe it expires July 1st.
Okay. Well, thank you, Mike. Unfortunate that you have to deliver this news to us, but, so Jeff, you'll be looking for a vote of the board, is that correct?
Well, it's really a contract that I've entered into, but I'm certainly, obviously, looking to get a read from the board of whether you believe this is an appropriate course of action. That's really a twofold purpose tonight. Is one, obviously, to inform the board of the circumstances, and also just to get some sense as to whether, recognizing this is not a great situation, but is the board supportive of taking this route, or if the board is, I suppose, adamantly opposed to taking this approach, then I would give pause to making the amendment to the contract. But then the consequence is, I guess we would have to go out to bid. Well, we probably wouldn't go out to bid. We would just go immediately to Waste Management or whoever is going to be able to provide the service at whatever that escalated price is, knowing that even in that circumstance, we're going to pay 100% of the tip fee for recycling, because that's just the nature of the climate today, and plus, the prevailing wage rate that, the new prevailing wage rate is going to be higher than the one that we're working under, so that cost goes up. So all of those things would be the consequence, essentially, if we decide to just go out and get somebody, next week, so to speak.
Okay, somebody, Mike,
One
please.
other point you should know is, we spoke about Boston just finishing up with their contract. That's the big gorilla. That's the one that all the big companies want, and the small companies don't want to be big because that's where the most money is. They put it out to bid. They had one bidder. Waste Management didn't even bid.
Okay, would anybody like to offer a motion based on the manager's recommendation?
I'll make that motion.
Motion's made by Mr. Kyra. Is there a second?
A second.
Seconded by Mr. Eaton. Discussion. Finding ourselves between a rock and a hard place seems to be the theme here. With that, call for the vote. All in favor? All opposed? Motion passes 4-1.
Thank you.
Mike, thanks for the update.
All right.
And
Hopefully it's the last time I'm back on trash.
and perhaps I could just yeah. Perhaps maybe we can work with you on maybe trying to educate residents. I know you mentioned at the beginning of your statements that we're trying, the manager's put out a few times and put out notices to the public about recycling, but I think it's probably not well known by folks that, your strawberry container, your blueberry container is not recyclable. So perhaps we can work with your department to find a way to help promote that a little bit more and do our part to try to cut down on the costs when it comes to recycling.
Sounds good.
Thank you. Have a good night.
You too.
Okay. We'll move into communications. Mr. Hull.
Yes, so first under communications, just wanted to update the board on the most recent conference call. This has been an ongoing effort, thanks to the efforts of our State Senator Bruce Tarr and our Representative David Robertson to work with the MBTA on dealing with the issue in North Wilmington as it relates to the commuter stop there. There was a conference call on June 11th from the town. We had Selectmen Kyra, Acting Police Chief Joe Desmond, and Fire Chief Joe McMahon, in addition to myself, participating along with our legislative delegation and representatives from the MBTA. Essentially, at this point, it's pretty clear that the long-term permanent fix is going to be more expensive and will take far greater time than we really feel is appropriate at this point. So the discussion, and I'll certainly suggest that Selectman Kyra offer any other comments that I may have missed here, but I think the focus was looking at some kind of a so-called temporary platform. Temporary could be 5 or 10 years or more, but this temporary platform, there was discussion about moving it northerly of the current location. The prospect, I guess, based upon other temporary platforms that they have done, is that the design costs could be something in the order of $60,000 to $100,000, and the actual construction cost about $500,000. At the end of that discussion, the folks from the MBTA were going to go back and take a more detailed look to find out, to come back with an estimate on the design costs and the construction costs. It was noted that there are something in the order of 27 or 28 other stations in a similar state. Clearly, one of the issues is going to be, I presume they're competing for similar resources. So that's another issue we're going to have to deal with in terms of how do we make the case about our particular rail station relative to these others, and hopefully through the assistance of our legislators, we'll be able to get the funds necessary to create this temporary platform.
Thank you, Mr. Hull, and as you mentioned, I was unable to be there that day because I was teaching, but our previous past chair, Mr. Kyra, thank you for being there. Do you have something you want to add?
No, Mr. Hull pretty much highlighted everything. It seems right now the best resolution at this point in time, what it's going to do is on one way, I believe, I may be wrong, outbound, inbound now. Going outbound, the train would go beyond and allow the crossing rails to come up so that traffic can flow. On the inbound, it would stop, but the rails would come down, or the crossing, the guards would come down, but it would not cross over the roadway, which would allow public safety vehicles to get through. So that, right now, it seems to be the best resolution that MBTA and our legislative delegation and town officials have come up with. So,
Thank you, and thanks to you gentlemen, and also I want to recognize the efforts of our state representative, Dave Robinson, who's also here tonight, so thank you for your continued efforts on this.
So next, under correspondence, just a letter to Terry Marciello. I wanted to provide her with just a note in congratulating her. I'll just read it into the record here. On behalf of myself and the Board of Selectmen, congratulations on being a recipient of the Massachusetts Commission on the Status of Women's 16th Annual Unsung Heroines Award. You were one of a select group of 134 women from across the Commonwealth because of your selfless work to make a difference in the lives of others. You have gone the extra mile without fanfare and without expecting even a thank you. The ceremony that was held on June 18th in the Great Hall of the State House was a fitting testament to you and your colleagues for commitment to community. People here in Wilmington have recognized for many years that a very special public servant works amongst us. An individual who is passionate about identifying ways to assist elders and their caregivers to address the broad range of health, financial, social, and emotional challenges of daily living. An individual who views the biological clock that is aging as a cup that is half full, not half empty, with opportunities at every turn to fill the cup with intellectual, artistic, and physical pursuits until the cup runs over. That positivity of spirit and how can I help attitude permeates the Bazell Senior Center. An individual who has managerial and creative skills to find ways around obstacles and to make the most from the limited resources provided. That individual is you, and it is only fitting that people outside of Wilmington be made aware of the special person we have known about all along. Once again, congratulations for this well-deserved recognition.
Certainly well-deserved it is. Congratulations to Terry. She's certainly the best in the business, so on behalf of this board, we congratulate her as well.
Next is a memo to the board just noting that Neil Cotier, who has been a member of the Finance Committee since 2017, has advised the chair, John Doherty, that as of June 30th, he is stepping down. It's strictly because of personal reasons. He's going to be relocating as a result of a job going to Ohio.
And we all thank Neil for his service to the community, and we certainly wish him and his family well going forward.
Next is notice of the reappointment of individuals to the Finance Committee. So just for those who may not know, the members of the Finance Committee are appointed by a so-called appointing committee, which is part of the town's bylaws. And that appointing committee is comprised of the chair of the Board of Selectmen, the chair of the Finance Committee, and the town moderator. So the individuals who are up for consideration, Marianne Galezzo has been reappointed to a 3-year term running through 2022. Lee Martinson, also reappointed, term through 2022. And Hirak Shah, reappointed to a term running through 2022.
Okay, moving on to board to consider. I believe we have 2 items. Mr. Hall.
Yes, the first item is board to consider appointment to the Commission on Disabilities. So you may recall that we've been making efforts to fill some of the vacancies that have existed. It's been a 7-person committee. We're currently up to 5 members, and it actually has, over the last probably year and a half or two, become more active. Phyllis Janetti is the longtime chair of this committee, but there has been an opening for quite some time. The statute kind of lays out the qualifications for committee members, and there's one spot available for a member, either a public official or an elected official, and it's I know that Selectman Eaton has indicated that he is willing to serve in that capacity. I certainly think that would be advisable if the board is so inclined to endorse my recommendation there.
Yes, thank you. I believe Mr. Eaton reached out to us last Wednesday, if I recall correctly, and I appreciate your willingness to take this on. And so if there's anybody who'd like to offer a motion to
I'll
make that happen.
motion to appoint Selectman Eaton to the Commission on Disabilities.
Okay, motion's been made by Mr. McCoy. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Mrs. O'Mahony. Any objections, Mr. Eaton?
No, but just for discussion, there is another vacancy on that commission. It is reserved for a handicapped person. So it's my hope that we can hopefully flush out some volunteers from the community to round out that commission. By statute, it's required that a majority of that commission is comprised of individuals that have a handicap, I think for pretty obvious reasons. The term for, well, it's been vacant, I think, for some time for an elected or appointed official does expire in 2020, so next year. The vacant position for a handicapped person expires in 2021 for now. So.
Well, thank you for bringing that back to our attention and to the community. So if there's anyone out there who might be interested, please contact Town Hall and we can point you in the right direction. But we do have a motion and a second to appoint Mr. Eaton. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? That's unanimous. Thank you, Mr. Eaton.
Thank you.
Then last under board to consider is a request from Joyce Mulvaney, who is the communications manager with RMLD. She has been in touch with Dana Burnham and Amanda Muncy from the farmers market to inquire about the possibility of having a program involving a demo of their electric vehicle educational event to run concurrently with the farmers market on Sunday, September 15th. It's my understanding that the farmers market is receptive to the idea. Their proposal would be to essentially run at the same time as the farmers market, but their setup would start at 9 a.m. and they would close things out at 3 p.m. on Sunday the 15th. So just looking for a board to approve.
Okay. Anybody like to offer a motion?
I'll make that motion.
Thank you. Motion's made. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Kyra. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? And that's unanimous as well. Okay, we're on to public comments. Are there any public comments? Sure, if you don't mind just stating your name and address for the record, please.
Yes, my name is Brooke O'Connell. I live at 5 Dartmouth Ave in Wilmington.
Okay.
The reason I'm here is because a few weeks ago there was a chemical spill by one of the disposal trucks for garbage on my street. Their solution was to rip up part of my street and repave it. However, that is now at the cost of my parents who live there and 2 of my neighbors at the sum of about $3,300 that we have to paying out of pocket for. And then it was brought to my attention last Thursday that there was a second chemical spill from a similar truck that we are now also going to have to pay for, it seems like. So the reason I'm here is just I don't feel that my family or the people on my street need to be responsible for something that was not our fault. Excuse me, it's been a real weird couple of weeks, if not a little more emotional than I intended.
And she came down. I had spoken earlier with the town, and I didn't mean to just bring it onto the board. But it seems that DEP has come down. The town was very active. DEP was active and approached Russell Carding. But to what I intend to do, and what I was hoping to, with the blessing of you and the board, is to perhaps appeal to Russell to just handle the last couple hundred feet for the $3,300. It seems like the initial oil slick left by the vehicles was compounded by the rain and spread further. So I'm personally going to ask DEP. It's not that we can expect anything from the town other than an ask, and we're asking that you might consider asking DEP and Russell to consider just handling the last 2-3 houses worth of possible contamination before they sign off.
Ms. O'Connell, right?
Yes.
Well, thank you very much for your comments. I know it's not easy to come here and to speak, but you did very well. And certainly it's understandable and unfortunate that you have to be here tonight and to describe what's taken place. I myself have been down there to see the unfortunate circumstance that took place a couple weeks ago. And I know Mr. Hull has been on top of this as well, so I want to give him the opportunity to say a few words.
So there's no question that this has been trying for the families there. I've had a number of conversations, as have staff, with at least one resident down there. The DEP, is my understanding, has, first of all, they identified the scope of the contamination area and essentially laid that out for the licensed site professional, LSP, that Russell hired, who I believe was Clean Harbors. And, not being an expert in these kind of things, my expectation is that, first of all, DEP did what they were supposed to do in terms of identifying the area of contamination, and that the LSP did what they were required to do in terms of removing the contaminant from the impacted area of the street. It's my understanding, not having the picture in front of me here, obviously, that there was a kind of a rectangular area on a portion of the street that was identified to be the impacted area. That was there was a street opening permit that was obtained through the engineering office. Paul Aluni has spent a great deal of time working with Clean Harbors, working with the residents. That material was pulled up and, as I understand it, properly disposed of, and then the area was repaved. I'm also told that a portion of at the end of one of the driveways of the resident who's at the far end of the street, there was some pavement put down there, which was intended to provide some measure of assistance there. But I guess from everything I'm being told, the work that was completed has addressed the contaminant. There was reference made to another episode, I guess this past week. There was my understanding from, again, Paul Aluni, who's been in touch with the representative at DEP, that the amount that was characterized was a matter of a very small amount. I think it was characterized as a matter of some number of teaspoons of oil or something that was not observed when the representative from DEP came on site. So I can't really speak to the particulars of that, other than to say, again, from what I'm hearing from the representative at DEP, it was a very small amount of contaminant, and that there was no further action that was going to be required. I know at the time there were some kind of absorbent pads that were brought in to attempt to try to gather up whatever materials were there. That was done last week. And I think that's really, as far as I know, the kind of the extent of the work that's been done.
So, Ms. O'Connor, we obviously agree with you that this is a very unfortunate set of circumstances. But if I'm hearing correctly from the representative, if you would like to lobby Russell to take responsibility and absorb that cost, I think you, having been here for tonight's meeting, can see the relationship that we have with Russell Disposal at this current point in time. But certainly any influence you may be able to help us with to talk to the folks at Russell about absorbing that cost would be greatly appreciated by the town as well. But to Ms. O'Connell, I can assure you that the town manager and our engineer will continue to monitor the situation for you and keep you guys informed as best as we can. And again, once again, we agree this is a very unfortunate set of circumstances.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, I appreciate it. She just wanted to hear her voice, and I said the select board will listen and they'll understand, so.
That's why we're here.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Chairman, if I can say, I know the family, they're good people.
Yeah.
Dartmouth Ave, and we're just about neighbors. And it's kind of sad that they hot top a certain area, and they skipped in front of your house and hot top at the very end. And I think that we all know that. You know, hey, I'm happy for you to say, hey, you came to this meeting. I verbally support your cause. I really do. And, you know, you just can't hot top A to B, skip C, and then go to D, you know? If they never did D, we probably wouldn't be here today, and I get that. And, you know, and I do support your cause. Yeah.
My more concern is that we're having to pay for this, and we're all working class people on that street. My parents are, one of them is retired, one of them is working part-time. People at the end of my street are retired, one was a former fireman. So it's the fact that we're out $1,200, $1,000 is very concerning to me.
You're right.
Yeah. Absolutely, and considering that we're 50% of the reason that Russell maybe still be in business come Wednesday morning, I hope that this $3,500 cost will be absorbed by them. Okay, thanks for being here. Any other public comments? Okay, seeing none, we'll move into announcements. Any of my colleagues have any announcements?
I just wanted to give a quick shout out. I felt appropriate since at my very first meeting as the selectman, I was kind of giving grief to Wilmington Youth Soccer for the net at Yentile that they couldn't control their balls. But this past weekend, I was happy to go to the Commissioner's Cup and see a sea of blue there. So I just want to congratulate all the athletes that played at the Commissioner's Cup this past weekend. I think there were at least like 15 Wilmington teams. It was a great weekend weather-wise, and it was just really great to see Wilmington so well represented. So I just wanted to put that out there, and hopefully that will absolve me from my earlier comments about them kicking the balls onto Main Street.
We'll find out.
We will.
Thank you. Any other announcements? I just have one, if I may, and I'll just give a plug to the next week's the 39th anniversary of the Wilmington 4th of July Fun on the 4th celebration here, which is always one of the best weeks of the year. So we want to encourage everybody to get out and enjoy themselves. If you're looking for information, I know it's going to be on important dates, but funonthefourth.com has got the complete schedule, and they also have information on their Facebook page as well. So hopefully everybody will enjoy themselves responsibly, and it'll be another great celebration here in town next week. Happy 4th of July to everybody. Any new business? New business? Seeing none, move right to the final portion, important dates, Mr. Hall.
Yes, through October 13th, the Farmers Market, Town Common, parking lot, 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. June 26th is the Economic Development Committee, Town Hall, Room 9, 7 p.m. July 3rd through the 6th, as previously noted, 4th of July Festival, 978-657-8081 is the number to call with questions or information, or funonthefourth.com. Town Common, the spectacular fireworks are scheduled for July 6th. And then the Family Day is July 4th, Town Common. Next Board of Selectmen's meeting is July 8th, here at Room 9, 7 p.m. July 10th, Concert on the Common, Ball in-house is the group, 6:30 p.m. to 8 p.m. July 10th is also a brush drop-off date, Old Main Street, 8 a.m. to 2 p.m. Brush drop-off again on July 13th, Old Main Street, 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. July 17th, Concert on the Common, the group is Jimmy and the Jesters, 6:30 p.m. to 8 p.m. July 17th is also the next meeting of the Ice Rink and Recreation Facilities Committee, Town Hall, 7 p.m. July 24th, Concert on the Common, the group is Backtrack, 6:30 p.m. to 8 p.m. July 31st, another concert on the Common, the 60s Invasion, 6:30 p.m. to 8 p.m. And then a Board of Selectmen's meeting on August 7th, Room 9, 7 p.m.
Thank you very much. And with that, would anybody like to motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
Motion's made and second. All in favor? It's unanimous. Good night, everyone.